Hi guys, it's Jenny from ScrapFX Design Team. Today I'm using the new release October rice papers. This is called Fairy Face. And I'm also using a junk journal from ScrapFX. This is the lace kit. I'm just flipping through so you can see the qualities of the papers, the die cuts and the acetates that are included in this kit. They're quite a nice little kit to put together and they're quite fun to play with. So the cover is actually a large business envelope and it's a little bit soft for a cover. So I'm adding 2 coats of gesso and I'm also including this washi tape over the binding just to give it a little added strength where it's needed the most. Because we're going to be opening and closing this journal, I just want to make sure that it doesn't tear in the future. So adding that washi tape to the binding and the inside of the journal. And I've also decided to add it around the edges of the booklet as well, just again to make sure that it doesn't tear or get all bumped up in the use of the journal. So just adding a little bit more strength, hopefully. Just tucking that on either side, the front and the inside covers, and trimming it off accordingly. And then I'll flatten the page out again and give it another coat of white gesso just to mute that washi tape down so it doesn't bleed through the colours when I paint my background. Now here I've selected some Paper Artsy acrylic paints. These are my favourite paints to use in the art journal. And I'm just basically painting down some splotches and then blending the next colours into the last blob. Trying to keep the colours fairly bright without creating too much mud. I want a very bright poppy background. Once that's all dry, I select my rice papers. I'm going to go with a smaller fairy here so I can use the wording on the front page as well. And because the background is so busy, I'm going to paint a coat of gesso on the back of the rice paper. This is because rice paper generally is translucent when you glue it down, and I don't really want the face to take on all those colours, so I've decided to have it more of a focal point, so the gesso will help it not to bleed into the background. Just fussy cutting that image out. I've now selected a few stamps. These are all ScrapFX. This one's called Harlequin, and I'm using some archival ink. I've picked a few colours that are matching the background, and I'm just going to stamp those randomly all over my background. This stamp set's called Chicken Wire, and this little one here is 2 set collage circles, collage circles I think. Tracing over my image here, this is just going to allow me to paint a little white area, a little bit larger than the traced area, just so I can blend that rice paper into the background and make it look a part of the page. And I'm using gel medium here to glue that down. So just brushing underneath and on top of, and then using my finger to blend that rice paper right into the paper. It was about here that I realised I wanted wings under there. So I've just peeled that up and I'm using the new release Wings. This is Wings Kit A or Set A. And I'm just using some cardstock here. This is a nice smooth 300 GSM cardstock. And I'm going to fussy cut those out. And I'll edge them with the same green ink that I've stamped them in. And then I'll use that gel medium again to glue those down and then place my rice paper over the top of them. Giving it now a layer of clear gesso. This is just to give the rice paper a bit of teeth for my pencils to stick to. And I'm just defining the lips and the nose here, so I'm just going over with a lead pencil and just putting in some extra lines, some extra squiggles, trying to keep it fairly loose and sketchy like the original design, but just defining the lips and the nose a little bit better. And then I'll go over with a black fine pen. This is a permanent ink, so it won't run when I hit it with some glue. And I'm just defining those lines, making them a bit stronger, so she really pops off the page. I'm using Layer Cake, Jane Davenport's Layer Cake paints here. They're like a watercolour, very strong and vibrant, very bright. They're kind of more like a gouache than a water paint really, as most of the colours are opaque. I'm just using the skin tone here, layering that in, and then I'll just use a few other colours to brighten her hair up and put in her eye colours. So just enjoying the paintwork here. Just basically blocking in the colours. I'm going to put some cheek colours in now, try and create a little bit more volume and depth to her face so it's not so flat. So just putting the blush in her cheeks and in her forehead, in her neck. And then doing her eye colour, so her eyeshadow and her eye pupil colour. Again, just giving that a quick dry, and then I'll grab my Prisma pencils. And again, just keep highlighting the shadowed areas. Try and even out her skin tone a little. And so I'm just using circular motions to layer my colour down and just lightly going over with my pencils. It's a bit hard to see with this sped up camera work, but I find pencils over the acrylic paint works really well. Really helps to define those shadowed areas and give her a little bit more volume and interest in the rice paper. I'm just using a white gel pen here and putting in the highlights, so whitening her eyeballs and just doing the highlights up her nose and highlighting her wings, her neck and in her hair. And I'm just using a little smudging technique while the ink is wet. I'm sort of rubbing my finger on there to smudge that in and blend it in to the background. Highlighting the stamped areas in the background now, just to give it a little bit more visual interest, and using my Posca pens to do some mark making. And then I'll flip to the other side and do the back so it's all cohesive. Again, highlighting those stamped areas just to give it a little bit more interest. Again, back to that smooth cardstock, and I'm just going to use the leftover paints and colour up that cardstock so that I can stamp on it. So just finger painting that paint on there. And this is called Rose Garden, again another Scrap FX stamp set. And I'm just stamping that on the dry paint. A little bit of gold acrylic now. This is Paper Artsy's gold. And again, I'm going to use the wording and I'm going to glue this down onto the rest of the cardstock. I want the words to pop a little bit off the page as well. They're a bit more of a focal point on the page, so I want them to really stand out. So on that gold piece, I'm just drawing a little crown, just a little accessory to pop in her hair. And now I'm cutting out the wording here, and I'll just audition them on the front page so that I can work out where I want to place them before I ink them up. So pretty happy with that sort of arrangement. And again, I'm using pink and purple inks here just to edge those wordings so that they don't look so stark on the background, look a part of the page. And then I decide to ink up the edges of the crown and do a little bit of doodling on that as well, just to make it look a part of the actual image. And so this is just gluing down the pieces. And I'm going back over with gel medium just to make sure that they're stuck down really well. As this is a front cover, it's going to get used, opened and shut quite a bit, so I want to make sure that everything's really stuck down well. Just scribbled a circle over her eye, and now I'm using my black fine pen to go around the edges of the wording, highlighting that circle that I've just scribbled on. And I'm just going to do a little bit of doodling over that circle just to give her a little bit more quirkiness, make her a little bit more whimsical. Now just going around the edges of the rice paper and her wings, trying to keep that sketchy line again just so it looks all incorporated with the original design. And I'm now cutting out those heads of the roses from the rose garden stamp, and I'm going to paper piece a little spray of flowers on her shoulder there, just stamping out onto the back page the rose garden stamps again. And I'm just using that fine pen just to extend those stems so they don't float off the page. And paper piercing some more roses onto those stamped roses there, just gluing it all down, and I've edged them all with a bit of black ink. So it's really starting to come together now. Just edging the edges of my pages with some more black ink, just with a makeup sponge and a bit of black splatter. And then I've quickly grabbed my Caran d'Ache fluoro pencils, and I'm just going to highlight those roses and make them really pop from the page as well. This is the final piece here. You can see a bit more of the close-up work. I hope you find that inspiring and give the rice papers a go. If you enjoyed the tutorial, please like, share and comment. Thanks for watching.